Joe Biden says once he's sworn in as president, it'll be full steam ahead on combating climate change. Biden says the United States will rejoin the 2015 Paris Accord on the first day of his presidency. He also promises to hold a global climate summit within his first 100 days. So is the Green New Deal and a global carbon tax coming to the USA? Or will Biden propose something else? Well, joining us is Gregory Wrightstone. Mr. Wrightstone is a geologist and the executive director of the CO2 Coalition in Arlington, Virginia. He is best-selling author of Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. Greg, it's good to talk to you again. So last fall, NPR Marist poll found only 12% of Americans say they're concerned about climate change. Yet it appears Joe Biden and the Democrats are making it a priority. So where do you think Biden plans to take us on this issue?
Well, yeah, he's going to take us someplace that's not going to be very pleasant for everybody in America. In fact, I'm in the middle of putting the final touches on a new commentary. The title is Joe Biden and his climate plan, be afraid, be very afraid. And we can tell how serious it is by who he's putting on his administration. He started with John Kerry as his climate czar, if you will. Now, John Kerry he's a true blue, dyed-in-the-wool climate extremist who really believes the Earth is going to end unless we act now. Other people, I think, mouth the words, but he's a true believer. And what's interesting about Kerry and kind of scary is that 3 years ago, he stated no matter what the United States did about climate change in terms of reducing our emissions, it wouldn't have anything to do with changing the world's temperature at all. We would have no effect on climate change. And the reason he said was because India and China continue to escalate their emissions by building more coal fires, mainly China. I could very well see John Kerry making a trip and coming back home waving a signed document by Xi in his hand saying, I've saved the Earth, I've saved the planet. The Chinese are going to reduce their emissions by X% by 2050. And, well, we had to get rid of we had to undo all that tariffs and all the good work that's gone on for the last 4 years trying to flatten the playing field with China. So that's a real danger right there with Kerry. And we also look at the other people he's appointing there, Janet Yellen at Treasury, actually. You're going, what does Treasury have to do with this? But I think it's likely Joe might impose some type of climate emergency like the COVID emergency about climate. And Janet Yellen's been a huge, huge supporter of carbon taxation scheme. She calls it a free market solution to the climate change problem. I call it a solution in search of a problem.
And Greg, that would be very costly to the U.S. I mean, some people are estimating as much as $90 trillion over 10 years. How could we afford that as a nation? Would that bankrupt the country?
It'd put us on our knees, economically put us on our knees. It would, and that's what the Chinese want. This is going right in with their scheme. Boy, they would love nothing better than to impose a carbon tax on America and on the Western world. It would cripple us economically. It would elevate the Chinese economy because they're not going to do anything. We know that.
Is that the goal, Greg? Is that the real goal, Greg, in all of this? Because I know Biden pledges to reduce carbon emissions in the USA to net zero, and by 2050, saying it would be good for the economy because it would create jobs. Also, Governor Gavin Newsom, right? He's already said gasoline-powered automobiles will be phased out in California by 2035. So both men support phasing out coal and oil and gas fracking, but what about the jobs? What do you think of those steps?
You got to make sacrifices. We all have to, we'll lose millions and millions of jobs, and it's going to cost you a lot more each year for everything you buy. The goal of a carbon taxation scheme is to raise the cost of energy, electricity, gasoline, everything else, and make those types of energy uncompetitive against their so-called clean brethren in wind and solar. There's a growing backlash against wind power across throughout the world.
And Biden also wants the Department of Defense, the U.S. military, to lead the way on carbon reduction. What do you think of that idea?
You can't make this stuff up. His 6 priorities is number 6 on the list is security of the nation for the military. For the military, that's number 6. The other climate change came in at number 4 for the military priorities. It's it's too scary you can't laugh at it. If somebody was writing a novel, you go, come on, that's not. Nobody would do that. But they are. They're prioritizing this, and his plan is a global. His plan for carbon tax is really a regressive taxation scheme, and by that I mean that the poorest among us pay the highest percentage of their income on energy, and if you increase the cost of that energy, which that's their stated goal, is to increase energy costs, it's impacting the poorest among us the most. If you're making $300,000 a year, well, $40,000 for energy costs, that's not much. But if you're making $50,000, it's a lot. It's not a good idea, and it's going to be very economically crippling here to the United States.
Well, plenty of material for a new book for you, Greg. Gregory Wrightstone, geologist, author of the book Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. Thank you, Greg Wrightstone, for sharing your insights.
Thank you, Gary.